Welcome to the Journal of Biophilic Design podcast. Thanks for joining us on the Journal of Biophilic Design podcast today. We're really excited to be joined by a fantastic woman, Tuwanda Green. She sits on the board of the Biophilic Institute. She's got over 32 years of architectural experience, including working for government design projects. She holds a doctorate in architecture from Virginia Tech, and she also teaches there as an adjunct professor. Her architecture firm focuses on human-centered design solutions grounded in scientific research, literature, and research methods. She's passionate about biophilic design, I have to say. She recently gave a brilliant presentation at one of our lunchtime biophilic design networking events, which, if you don't know about them yet, they're open to all. And please visit our homepage on our website, journalofbiophilicdesign.com, where you can find out about the next one. She's also written about neuroscience and epigenetics in issue 15 of the Journal of Biophilic Design. So I encourage you again to check out the Journal of Biophilic Design website. So enough of me waffling, Tuwanda. Thanks for joining us today.
My absolute pleasure, Vanessa.
Yeah, lovely, thanks. Well, can you start by telling us a little bit about yourself, please, and what you do?
Okay, I am a passionate architect. I have been in this field since the eighth grade, actually. So that's a little more than 32 years, but I kind of chose the field very early, and my grandmother reminds me that you knew when you were in eighth grade that you wanted to be an architect. So that led up to a lot of thinking about how I would present myself in the world as an architect. And I learned very quickly going through college, how to be an architect, the nuts and bolts of it. And it was right around the early 2000s that I realized that architecture was so much more than just a building. It was so much more than just a shape, and it was more than being recognized in a really, really popular architecture magazine. That architecture was more than a business. It was more than making places. It was about building communities and people. And that was very profound to me. And it was all started because of Paul Eberhard, an architect who, in the early 2000s, started to make that connection between the brain and architecture. And his books, of course, I consumed them, and I attended, events when he was in the DC area where I lived, and actually followed him very closely until he established ANFA, which is Academy of Neuroscience for Architecture. And that's where I began my deep delve into understanding how the body responds to the environment. So it's been an incredible journey. It's been awesome in terms of even learning more, that John just opened the door for us. And then he's allowed us to go down deeper and deeper into the rabbit hole. And it's been exciting. It's been revealing because I am so confident that we are a big part of shifting how people live now and well into the future, as well as how their children live as well. So we've got a great opportunity here to do awesome things.
And it's refreshing to hear that you've this almost responsibility to create places and havens there where people are going to flourish, not just exist, really. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly.
For you, what got you interested in biophilic design? I mean, you're so it's like really woven into your,
Yes.
everything you do
So
now.
from that, from that brain, that brain discovery, I thought, oh my goodness, nature. And the interesting story for me is that when I was very young, I'm first grade, my mom relocated us from the city, which was very much cobblestone streets and streetcars and buses and trains and not a lot of landscape where I would have a tree to hang out in, to the Virginia area. And that area was a basic garden apartment, but it was backed up to a beautiful acreage of woods. And consequently, my brother and I spent a lot of time in there. And to this day, I still feel the difference in my physiology, my psychology, my calmness from coming from a space or a city which I constantly would grab onto my grandmother's hand if we were traveling. I didn't feel like I could be by myself ever anywhere. But of course, I'm in the first grade. No kids really on their own at that age, but in the woods, completely different. We were allowed to be ourselves and be free and explore and stick our hands and feet in the water and climb the trees and huge conversion. And then it hit me one day, oh, wow, nature is our source of healing, or our source of discovery, our source of autonomy. It gives us so much comfort and nurturing that it allows us to think, it allows us to be innovative. It allows us to put one and one together and start doing things. So it occurred to me like, wow, okay, so nature buildings, the brain. Okay, all this makes sense. Okay, let's do this. And of biophilia, I started to learn about when I went back to college to get my master's, and I did my dissertation, my thesis on biophilia and the built environment and how these two must be together. Everybody, come on, let's do this. And I was so happy to finish school, and I thought, okay, well, I've got a master's in this. Everyone's gonna believe me, right? Nah, nah. And at the time, I was working full time with the government. So I had a set of protocol that I had to follow, and you follow this, and we don't go over here. We just do what we've always been doing because if it's not broke, don't fix it. It was broke, but we still not gonna fix it. But that's a whole other story. I understand how things take time in organizations to shift, and the world hadn't seen any real reason to bring plants in to make the outside connected to the inside. There wasn't any real connection there until the pandemic.
Mhm.
And that's when I started to see a lot more interest in, oh, okay, well, maybe we should. Well, yeah, where's Tawanda? She's that one that's always talking about plants. Let's start thinking about how we could do this. And myself, who I will say is very anxious about, okay, let's do this right now. I was very anxious to put it in throughout the entire building, and some things happening, of course, but I really wanted to do a lot more. I thought that we could do this in a more progressive, in a more aggressive way. And went back to school, finished did my dissertation on this very thing of biophilia and the framework for architects and builders to use to get this into the built environment from inception, not throw it in there afterwards. So I thought, okay, I've got my dissertation finished. We should all do this. Everyone should be on board right now, right? Not so much. Again, we're talking about organizations that need to shift from situation normal to situation improvement, situation thriving, situation where we can start to monitor and engage how people are feeling better. Now, I'll go back and tell you that I understand where they're coming from because people are not dropping dead in their offices. We're surviving because our bodies are really wonderful organisms that we adapt. But the problem was is trying to make the business case of we need to do this now so that people live longer, so that people don't go home stressed, people sleep better at night, people produce better products, people are more efficient, people are more communal. And that's a hard business case to sell because it's not in front of you on the shelf that you can
Mhm.
pick it up, put it in the office. Okay, it's all better. It's something that you have to baseline track and monitor. And that's where I am I'm very interested in getting to the college students, getting to the architects who are practicing, getting to the developers, getting to the community centers or the cities, getting into the city development to explain this to them from every level of inside the space to the landmarks that we put in our cities to create better communities and spaces that just cause people to want to be better.
Mm, lovely. I think that's what I love about your work is because everything that you're doing is always comes back to research and it comes back to evidence, but then it's all woven into this, innate understanding and the way you describe things. And I've seen you speak as well, obviously at the Biophilic Leadership Conference and other things. I've gone away and stalked you as well. But you always speak from your heart, you speak with passion, but you're always backed up with evidence. And then like you say, you have to have all these things, and it's a brilliant way you phrase that. It's like because it's not on the shelf to say, look, you need this. They can't just pick it up and like, oh, it's a new program that they stick into their system. It's a longer term game, isn't it, really?
Exactly, exactly. And that longer term gain has been incredibly important to me from the perspective of epigenetics,
Yeah.
because the science of epigenetics, which is not very, very old at all, is more and more supporting the fact or the correlation between your your exposure to nature and your health. And then that health is stuck to you like gumballs, and those gumballs could potentially be passed on to your children. So you think about, okay, my life is great, I'm living well. It also translates to the next generation. Or on the opposite side, my life is not so great. I'm not getting outside. I don't get enough fresh air. I'm not taking enough breaks. I'm not meditating. Those gumballs could unfortunately potentially be passed on to your children.
Mm.
So that research that comes out we're constantly seeing research come out on epigenetics. We're seeing it come out on the correlation between green space and cardiovascular health, green space and um, blood pressure, heart rates. We see a lot of that come out, and that's what's important to me. That I'm always grabbing that knowledge, those scientific studies, and correlating them to something that is in the built environment.
Yeah.
So I guess one you're probably thinking, well, how do you do that?
Yeah.
Take evidence and scientific research on light
Yeah.
and understand the mechanisms behind how light is important in terms of the diurnal colors between the day that allow your body to prepare to create the melatonin inside your body so you can sleep better. And if you don't have that, you need you won't sleep well and you won't get into the REM state. So what does that mean in the architecture environment? It means that you try to strategically place windows in all of your spaces. And if you can't do that, you try to figure out what are the alternates, because you as an architect understand that that is so important to the longevity of the human. Will we live and survive? Yeah, we'll live and survive. I've worked for years in office spaces without windows, but it was awful.
Mm. Yeah.
And I felt that later on, but now that I know this, I can share it with architects.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I want to talk about actually, we're going to talk about epigenetics in a minute, but I want to talk about how, from a neuroscience point of view, how does, why is biophilic design important?
Okay, so from everything starts in the brain. Let's start there. So that whole process for me breaks down to stress. So in the brain, we have our HPA axis, and that axis is important for preparing you to either be calm or be ready to run, fight, or flee, whatever. So in the brain, when we understand how those mechanisms work, we understand how stress works. And when we understand how stress works, we figure out ways to reduce the occurrence of stress in the built environment. So you're thinking, oh, the environment is innate. It's so not so. The environment is acting upon us all the time. So you think, okay, all right, the brain. The brain is processing billions of bits of information on a subconscious level. Only about, oof, the number doesn't come to me right at this moment, but I think it's something like, we'll say a 0.5% of
Yeah.
those neuron transmissions are happening consciously. So when you surround the brain, the body with the right environment, that subconscious processing are happening in a positive way, a supportive way, a restorative way. And that is why the brain is so important. Okay, so what are that's why the brain's understanding is so important. So you say, okay, well, what kind of things are supportive? Nature.
Mm,
Nature's supportive. Space shapes are important. Ceiling heights are important. Colors are important. So that knowledge is incredibly important in terms of building structures that people will either sleep in at night or, live in as a home or work in 12, 14 hours a day.
mm, yeah.
And that definitely builds up an environment that can either support you
Mm,
or it can work against you. And then even further, that environment that you're experiencing could potentially affect the next generation.
mm.
Because if it's a great one, you can pass that on potentially to your children. If it's not, you've got a problem.
Yeah, exactly. I want to talk about actually, let's talk about the genetics and epigenetics at this point. And I do want to talk about architecture and how it sort of manifests itself. But you gave a brilliant talk actually at the Biophilic Leadership
Thank
Summit in April. And I was really fascinated, like you say, these markers, these gumballs on the genes, and how that's, even influenced by like familial markers or, by your ancestors and
you.
then and obviously how when we're surrounded by a different environment, we can potentially change them or potentially influence them or dislodge them or whatever it is. But can you maybe first of all, in a kind of like in a nutshell, explain what epigenetics is for somebody that might have heard it for the first time?
Okay. So if you think about DNA, most folks can associate a DNA, the double helix ladder coil. And that DNA, as you probably are familiar, is what gives you the identity of who you are, your hair color, your height, all of those interesting things. Those genes inside that DNA have special roles along that whole big long coil. And those genes will either express themselves as intended or they may change as a result of an epigenetic mark. And that's epigenetic mark, which I call the gumball. And of course, there are several other types of epigenetic marks, but the methylation that I'm talking about is just one type. And it, like a gumball, can stick to a certain part of your DNA on a gene area that is supposed to express itself in a certain way. And that gumball gets in there and it kind of gunks it up and it changes the expression. So that expression is there inside of your body and it causes the problem. That problem might be um, propensity to stress, might be anxiety, it might be um, being in open spaces,
Mm,
being in closed spaces. It could be a bunch of different things. So once you have that mark there, that mark can stay there, but also it can potentially be reversed because of the environment that you are in. Epigenetic marks are generally a result of the environment meaning the air, the carcinogens, the toxins. It could also mean the type of space that you live in. Are you living in a space that's very small and cramped? Are you working in a space that's in the basement that has no lights? Those are also environmental factors that can potentially create the marks or potentially reverse the marks that you have there and make them better or make them go away. Essentially, what we're trying to do is we're trying to create environments that if you have a negative gumball, that we could potentially reverse that expression to do what it's supposed to do what that gene is supposed to do. So, in a nutshell, it's like having a gumball stuck to a part of your DNA that causes it to get gunked up and messed up. And then we're trying to just get that gumball out of there. Because when you think about gumballs and you think about I think about chewed gum. It's like having chewed gum on something. It's like, oh my God, I gotta get this gum out sweater. And I feel like genetics is like that. Epigenetics is like that. It's like I gotta get this thing off of me. And if I spend more time outside, I can work the out of my stutter. So yeah, I like to think about it that way. So I spend as much time as I can outside.
Well, they say all sorts of things, don't they, about, it's for people who have antisocial behavior or in like environments where, and then you put like biophilic design, you put trees, you put plants, you put, parks, and then there's less antisocial, there's less and less antisocial behavior. So I
Yes,
mean, if that's like this antisocial is a sort of an external response to something that's like within us, say, anger or anxiety and all that kind of thing, and then we're surrounded by nature, it kind of makes sort of sense, doesn't it, really, I
yes,
suppose?
it does. But then on the other hand, there is the epigenetics that's come through generational trauma
Yeah.
that causes people to not have as strong affinities for nature because of what's happened through generations and cultural exposure that says, okay, the woods are not good. We don't go in the woods.
Mm,
And that's a result of a couple of different things. But in order to reverse that mark, it means starting to expose people to nature more. And that's what I feel like. I mean, that's my arrogant opinion about it. That if you're not prone to want to go in the woods, or if you're anxious about being there, I feel like if we start to introduce nature into the space more,
mm,
introduce nature so it's connected more inside and outside, introduce nature so that you see it on a more regular basis, that you can start to develop that relationship,
mm.
kind of like dating.
Yeah.
Just start small. Rush all in.
Note to self.
I'm preaching to myself. I'm preaching. So yeah, I think it's the same way with nature, especially with those who have had
Yeah.
unfortunate
Mm,
histories with nature. And I have to say that I've come across a lot of that in my community, my personal cultural community, where we don't go outside, we don't play outside, we end up being in very controlled environments. And I that's a whole nother topic that,
yeah,
we
exactly.
can,
And
anyway.
like you say, I mean, we know that we know that the biophilia connection, we know that nature connection for everybody, for every human sort of species, every human entity is a positive one. It's a good thing, for the fresh air, for the infrared and on all this stuff. So being able to help maybe these sort of negative genetic markers to be reversed or to be silenced in some way or to be replaced or to be overwhelmed if you want by more positive experience, then and that's also for me, it's why it's so important that in terms of equity, that everybody has access to a park, everybody has access to green space, not just gentrifying a certain area, not just allowing, in London, there was all the, we had like these courtyard areas in the centre of London where there was a key. If you had an apartment, you were only allowed to go in if you had the key. But then the Victorians, particularly, they created all these beautiful parks for people because they felt that, people had access to parks, the workers, their health would be better. It was a much more philanthropic kind of mindset. So it's really interesting to hear it from the genetics perspective and experience and also personal stories and everything, isn't it? I mean, like you say, there's a whole another podcast we could do about this actually, and then maybe we should actually maybe we should have a look at that. But
Yeah, that'd be a fun topic to, an intriguing topic to expose for
yeah.
sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think, it's also to bring in some positive examples where, things have been sort of overturned, but also to look at the other side where, so where can we, find the roots in to really support people, everybody. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah. Um, I want to ask you about biophilic design and architecture. So how do you see biophilic design in architecture sort of manifesting itself? I mean, how should we be employing biophilic design in architecture? Let's
Okay.
start there.
I think the one of the very first basic steps that biophilia and architecture should include is understanding and getting a hold of the 14 patterns of biophilic design, Terrapin Bright Green. They have a 15th pattern, which is the awe pattern, but when you go get the 14 patterns of biophilic design on their website, it will give you all 15. It's a wonderful place to start. Absolutely necessary, in my opinion. And I think a lot of the people's
Yeah.
opinions too. But
Yeah.
it's a great place to start. And that gets you to understand the actual parts of the brain that respond in terms of the biophilic element. So that's a wonderful way to start. And then for me, it gets a little deeper in terms of research, but then you also have the living future, living
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 Future
future. Yes.
Institute. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Okay. Living future. You have Fitwell, you have Well, you have all these other programs, or should I say, rating systems that allow you to get more organized in terms of have I covered this, and this. And then it also is supported by research as well. So we've got all these great vehicles that we can use and tools that we can use to get us introduced to how we can implement this into the architectural environment. And the important part, and again go back to me in my desire to constantly understand how science is changing, because things you can do what's called a cross-sectional look at things, and that's one point in time. But things change in, politics, war, climate, all these things change. So as a result of that, I constantly stay in the science to see how we are learning more about things that we can do, and then also how that might look in the architecture environment. So I would definitely start with the 14 patterns. Understand all of the different rating systems, the wells, the living futures, the fit wells, and anything else that I may have inadvertently forgotten, forgive me. But understanding those, but then also as a designer, an architect, a person who creates anything in the built environment, understand how the human body works. Because if you don't understand the basics about human physiology, you can't relate how well you can create an environment that supports them. So if you're doing a school, you're most interested in cognitive development. You're interested in how well can we create an environment that allows a person to, number one, relax enough to be able to be comfortable to think, to imagine, to put things together that may not have been put together before. So your basic understanding of how the brain works for cognitive support is important, because that's the specialty that you're working on in your environment in this particular project. Then maybe you might have a home, or you might have a spa, or you might have a hospital. Those are different types of um, focus points of the body that you might be trying to address. And if you don't understand how the body works, you'll do the same thing in every space and not understand how you could be way more effective, way more efficient, and come out with a better outcome, having to understand how the brain works in each particular environment. And then understanding, I have to put this with it as well, understanding what the client wants, getting to the client first to understand what is it that we need, what are the pain points, what do we need to resolve, how does that look in the architecture environment, going to the research, understanding that these types of things, maybe it's the colors in this range, maybe it's the ceilings with these heights, maybe it's the furnishings with these textures, maybe it's the sound nearby, maybe it's the smells. There's so many wonderful opportunities to implement those in an organized fashion, especially now. And I have to throw this plug in for AI, has given us a much better handle on collecting information and being able to go through the information and be able to come to a conclusion a lot faster.
Mm. Yeah, exactly. And love it or loathe it, it's there. AI is there. And, I think, it might seem a bit sort of, anti-biophilic design, but actually, in order to be able to pull research faster and, actually have access to things, as long as we trust the sources it's coming from, I think
Mhm.
that's the thing, is about trust, isn't it? Once we if we do trust that, yeah,
Absolutely. I teach that in my class that everything has to have a source,
yeah,
and you go to that source that you got the information from, and then you verify it.
yeah.
Don't just take it for granted. Please do not do that.
Yeah, exactly. Obviously, I get sent quite a lot of stuff that's been written by AI now.
Mm.
The telltale bullet points, the telltale everything else. And it's like, oh my goodness. So which is fine. I don't, it's sort of, people have got to start somewhere. But yeah, anyway, that's again another conversation.
Yeah, that's a very good point. You have to start somewhere. That's
Yeah.
the start. It is not the final product.
Exactly, exactly. It's like having a friend. That's how I like look at it as. It's like having a friend that can help you kind of, get certain way down. But yeah, and it also accelerates this. And I think that's where we are, what you're saying here as well, is like, we have an opportunity here to do things. And because life and business and just the industry, everything moves so fast, that any tools that we can use to help aid this acceleration, as long as it's backed up and it's factual and everything else, then
Absolutely.
it's another tool in the box, isn't it, really?
It's another super tool. I call it my super tool.
Yeah, exactly. Can you give us an example maybe of some architecture, or a biophilic designed place that you'd like to kind of celebrate or just share with us and kind of explain maybe how the biophilic design principles might be affecting us and that kind of thing.
I I go back to Castel Vecchio. It's in Verano, Italy. I managed to get there on a solo trip all by myself, and I was in Venice at the time. And one of my good friends says, "You got to go there." Okay, I get on the train. I go. It's raining the entire day, and I come to this huge castle, which I'm sure dates late 1800, maybe earlier than that, or early 1800, something maybe later than that, earlier than that. But I get in there, and it's everyone's got umbrellas, and we're all just kind of dropping things, and just kind of lost in the whole rain, water, wet. Where do I put this? How do I pay? Where can I leave my things? Because in this museum, you have to leave it in a locker. So I actually get settled, and I start walking, and I'm noticing, of course, how kind of dark it is. Not so much dark, but not bright because the sun is not out. But I'm looking at these incredible openings in the castle where they have been fashioned out by the architect, who I will tell you at the very end. And I keep continuing to walk, and I'm listening, and I'm looking, and I'm feeling the ground as I'm walking through, and I'm kind of looking at the displays and walking left and right. And nothing seems at this point like, wow, this is amazing. But as you continue to go through this castle, it's huge, and it has a long journey through it. So I'm probably about 15 minutes in, and I'm looking at different displays. And then I get to an area where you need to go up some stairs. So I get upstairs, and I am walking across what looks like a bridge. And lo and behold, I did not expect this bridge to go down what literally looked like a million stories down. It felt so it was so unusual to experience something like that in a museum. So I'm thinking, oh wow, this is really kind of weird. And that was the first experience I had of awe. I was like, wow, because I didn't expect it there. So that awe for me was just completely shifting my position about what museums should have inside. And this drop down that was all of a sudden that you didn't expect was an incredible experience for me. So I thought, oh wow, this is great. And I was actually kind of scared because I was didn't expect it. And I continue walking through, and then there's another opening, and it's got a huge piece of artwork in it. And I'm looking up, and I need to also note that this display is outside. So I've gone from an inside over a bridge, seen a large drop into a space that's covered with a huge piece of artwork in there, huge sculpture. So I stand there, and I'm feeling the breeze, and I'm hearing the sound of the rain. And then I'm also, you kind of smell rain as well.
Yeah.
So I'm just experiencing all these really cool things, the smell, the sound of the rain, the wetness. And it's just like, wow, is it me? Maybe I'm just, because sometimes I think I overreact because I'm an architect, but
Yeah.
I go through all these emotions. And then I move to another area of the museum, and I start to recognize that I am in a basement where this architect has all of his sketches. It's Carlos Scarpa's sketches, and they're his own
Wow.
hand. And then I'm in this other experience of, this architecture is amazing. And then I get to actually see the architect's work done by his own hand. So I have to tell you, that was just like all around just I think I experienced every emotion I could that day. I really do think I did. Because the way he designed it, because of the experiences I felt through it, because of the smells, the rain, the sounds, and then the tie to actually seeing this architect, Carl Scarpa's work. Amazing.
Yeah. That's beautiful. As you say, being able to the older buildings particularly as well. It's like we've that connection, that being able to look out, look in, and actually using it as a museum. I mean, what a lovely concept, what a lovely idea as well. The natural light, the airflow. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
really, really lovely. Thanks.
That
Um,
was my pleasure.
yeah, 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 really. I mean, there's a load of modern architecture as well, isn't there? That's just really beautiful. There's some really interesting spaces. Do you have one? Do you have a sort of modern piece of architecture that really calls out to you? Um,
Oh yeah. This
it's-
one was in it's the Audio Library in Finland,
okay.
and the entrance is like a swirl. It's
Wow.
very hard to explain, but it's almost like looking at a tornado, but not a tornado of destruction, but like it's gathering the building into like a vortex
Mm,
shape that comes down toward the entrance, and it's so high. You just feel like you want to come here, and you want to learn, you've been impressed by the entrance, and it sets your whole time in the library. It starts it off right. It just establishes this exposure and this feeling of another awe to me that I think was very, very well done. And then on top of that, this is the personal part. The library was very conducive for children. The
okay.
top floor had a beautiful area for children to play and read, and even had some rooms where they can go in and they can see things on the wall, moving things on the wall. It was a absolutely wonderful library. I love that library.
Yeah, that's beautiful. You described that so well. I was with you with that, this whole the swell.
I
Yeah.
hope I said that correctly. I hope I got it across well enough for everyone to understand. And I took a really cool picture there, and was very fortunate to have my daughter and my grandson with me. So we really enjoyed that library. Another friend said, "You got to see that library." I was like, "Okay." Like, oh my God, this is amazing.
I think that's just it, though, isn't it? I think when you get architecture, if I can say, if you get, when you hit a sweet spot with architecture, they do feel like almost like songs, like melodies, don't they? That you enter into and you commune with them, you almost sing with them. It becomes you and it, doesn't it? And you feel like you're the only one sort of in that experience.
Exactly, exactly. And sometimes I kind of pinch myself and I say, "You're overreacting." And I'm like, "No, this is awesome." There are other places I could go on about the library, about the way the corner of the building comes together and the glazing and but that will be here forever. But your body knows good architecture, that's what I say. Your
Yeah.
body knows it.
But then you go, there's back to the biophilia, isn't it? It's back to this these sweet spots of like nature, bringing nature and patterns and elements of nature in. I think it's yeah,
Absolutely.
of vital importance to us, isn't it? Really, to our vitals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. And then you put that in a place where the library is, because
Oh,
that vortex was a wood material.
oh.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, yeah, and the smell as well, I should imagine. Like, so it's sensory. Actually,
Mhm.
talking of senses, actually, our brains, obviously, and for biophilic design, the neuroscience of it, and our whole bodies really are sort of sensory beings, aren't they? Really, we kind of we're evolved to listen for sound. Is something going to eat us, or can we eat it? Or what can we see on the horizon? Is the temperature changing? What's going to rain? I better take shelter, all that stuff. And when we're inside, like most architecture places, we're inside and they've forgotten all that. So what you're calling for here really with biophilic design is a sort of like to re-enliven maybe the senses of people.
You are spot on, Vanessa. You are spot on to reinvigorate, remember,
Yeah.
reunite that part of us that has never changed. We've been in the built environment for such a sliver of our human Homo sapien existence. And you can't expect us to be significantly different than the anthropomorphing man that's walking in the grass. You're still on high alert. Um, you still know when your body can relax, and those things are constantly on in the body.
Mm.
And again, the brain is processing all of this and talking to your entire being, but your mind is only conscious of such a small amount. And there here again comes this business case of explaining to builders and developers that this is not something that we can talk about and or we can pick up off the shelf and take a drink of it and say, okay, I'm aware. This is the way our bodies are built. And so we have to design in concert with the way the body is built to support it and to help it thrive.
Mm. Beautiful. Oh, I'm hoping that people listening are going to be inspired by either taking up biophilic design and architecture, or at least banging on doors to say, look, next time you design our building, you make sure you
Yes.
stick some biophilic design on it. You know,
And
That's-
do it, start from the very beginning, incorporate this from the inception. And if you have an existing building, from the inception of renovation, have that as a must have in the building. It's so much easier to VE something out
yeah,
at the end if it's thought of afterwards. So when it's a part of the vision of the design, the renovation, you don't lose it. It has a better staying power.
yeah. So that's really it then. It's the kind of one of the key things you'd say is kind of make sure it comes in right at the beginning.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if you don't know who to look to, you either, as I mentioned, the biophilic patterns, but then there's always people just like me. I'm not alone. We're not very numbered, but
Mm.
I'm not alone. There's lots of folks out there who have this same deep need to support the human in the space. Because if we support the human, then we are also at the same time supporting the climate. We're supporting nature because we're going to take care of nature and we're going to make sure that trees are here and that in the next step animals are here and insects and all of these things. So when we start to repair that nature human relationship, we're actually simultaneously repairing that climate issue and the need to just chop a tree down just because it's just a tree. No, it's just here to help you breathe. And that reciprocal relationship should be a reason to never chop a tree down. But again, I understand trees can sometimes fall on people's houses and trees can bring bugs and But if we change that relationship that from being more accustomed to those things, I think I think we can't do anything but be
Yeah.
in a better place.
Absolutely. And if you say the trees have got bugs or whatever, but actually, if we've got proper infrastructure around it and the proper biodiversity, then they won't have the bugs because they'll have the predators. So actually, we're back to the thing of, let's make sure it's all harmonious and properly balanced.
Right.
Just,
Right.
random ad hoc, oh, let's stick that there and stick this here. And oh, that's an issue, chop it down. We end up chopping everything down, which is what we've been doing. So, yeah, we're back
Yeah.
to, we're back to square one. Um,
So sad to see that when
yeah.
they shot that.
Oh God, I know. I cry. I actually visceral pain when I see, it's just,
And
yeah. Anyway, I wanted to ask you about water, and actually how our brains, what happens to our brains when we hear water? I mean, obviously, presumably water is obviously vital to our very being and our survival. What goes on?
so the water is another great thing because water is combined with sound.
Mm,
Generally, when we're seeing water, that's a survival mechanism because, of course, we can't go very long without water. Go a lot longer without food, but not very long without water. And that survival mechanism is a part of the evolutionary survival.
mm,
So when we see water, then we hear water. Water is in a babbling brook, something that's moving slowly but not moving too fast, is another sign of survival. Because if it's going too fast, it gets a little too dangerous. If it's going too slow, you start to think stagnant and
yeah,
it's not moving. So when you've got that right rhythm of water moving, that's another survival mechanism because more than likely there's fish in there. There's something you can get out of there. It's a place where you can be a part. You can be in that area and not feel like you're going to go over a cliff any second. So that's another thing. And then also that water kicks up ions. So when that water crashes together, it creates these wonderful ions that are very supportive for us as well. So water has so many things that are not just the visual, but also the sound and the ions, and then the evolutionary support. Because again, your brain, your body is constantly checking the environment on a subconscious level. So when these things are around, it's a wonderful adoption into a built environment. So when you have these kind of landscapes where you have a water feature, you can also incorporate that, of course, with plants and you almost feel like you're outside, to a certain degree, but you're in this covered space, and maybe that's a communal space. But the brain is very much supported, I believe, when you're using these water features, either inside or outside. And, you know, I've often heard people tell me, well, I don't want to hear water because I don't want to make me have to go to the bathroom. And I thought, yeah, but it's kind of like everything else, you get the good and the bad with it, but it has way more good in terms of supporting your brain and addressing things that, I'll
yeah.
say it again, is picked up on a subconscious level.
Yeah, exactly. And it's great at masking sound as well, isn't it?
Mhm.
I mean, I've got it just here. I mean, there's a few cars at the bottom. I mean, the trees make a good like masking anyway, kind of like sound absorption. But the little bit, the water that I've got, although the pump actually, so the wee thing actually, I think is because of the speed of the water again. I think because
Uh-huh.
it's trickling like really little tiny trickle. That's when you, I think that's the trigger. But like when you got the sweet spot of like just the right amount, so I need to clean the
Right.
filter. That reminds me. Um, well, we're going to have a theme of water in the Biophilic Design Conference in November.
Yeah,
So, yeah, so
yeah.
if people are listening, please go to the biophilic.designconference.com and you can find out a bit more information about that. But also, I know that we're planning, aren't we, to actually create like a kind of bit of a resource and for people to, if they're wanting to find business cases and research, then we're going to be doing like a little collaboration down the line. So very soon. So if people are looking for business support, then please do reach out to us, because I'm sure we can help you, and we'll be telling you more about that when we launch it later this year. So amazing. Well, before I ask you the final magic question, TJ, and I could just talk to you for ages about all sorts of things, and I could feel myself already like having about another 15 million questions to ask for a second podcast. But before I ask you the final question, is there anything particular that you'd like to add or share with the audience?
I think what I'd like to go away with is I have recognized the power of design personally on a couple of different scenarios. And my last, I explained to you about my childhood and the change in my environment, how it changed me. Um, and now in my adulthood, I recognize how design really does create communities. My community is designed in a certain way that houses are closer to each other, houses are clustered more than they are aligning and all facing out to the street. The streets are not straight; they're curved, and we have lots of trees and trails between our little neighborhoods. And then the other thing is the mailbox. The mailbox is not at everyone's house. We have a mail house that's centralized to each little neighborhood, and it forces you to walk outside to get your mail, and you've got to walk a little distance. First of all, it forces your body to move. Second of all, you're going to end up talking to someone, waving to someone, um, petting someone's dog on the way, and that creates community. I cannot say enough how important the role of an architect is in creating not just beautiful places to exist in, but creating communities where people look out for each other, people support each other, people are nice to each other, people have dinner at each other's house, you know, that type of things. And even sitting on porches, all of our houses have porches so that you have somewhere you can sit outside and either you can watch the people or you can have people up on your porch. And so design did that.
Hmm.
No one's put up a sign and said you have to visit your neighbor at least once a week. The way this is designed created that. And that is incredibly impactful to me as an adult to
Mm.
have community. And if we had this everywhere,
Mm. Yeah.
world peace, okay?
Absolutely. And yeah, that Serembe is an amazing place actually. So yeah, for the Biophilic Leadership Summit this year was amazing to experience it. The curved streets and everything else. So Tuwanda, thanks so much for your time. So I'm going to ask you now the final question. So if you could paint the world with a magic brush of biophilia, what would it look like?
It would look like where I live right now. It would look full of trees, full of trails, full of community, full of life because it's created this incredible platform for connection to not just people, but to nature and to animals. I think that's it.
Thank you for listening to the Journal of Biophilic Design podcast.